I'm a Midwest kid too. I was born in Minnesota, and then Chicago is kind of where I came up as a DJ and all that. I lived there for almost a decade, and yeah, man, Chicago's like, that's my home.
Oh, wow. That's where I'm from, and all my stuff as well on the come up, I guess. So,
dude, it's the fucking, I miss Chicago, man. It's the best.
Yeah, and honestly, since I left there, I see more and more people just being like how much they love Chicago, which is funny because I never would hear that when I was there. But of course,
dude, yeah, of course.
Did I make a mistake?
Yeah, well, it's like Chicago's got a weird, because I mean, obviously it's a huge city and full of culture and interesting people and just a bunch of shit going on. For dance music, obviously has an incredible history, and so many artists come out of there. But then, I don't know, you never really hear, at least for what we do, for, I guess in the larger EDM sphere, I don't know. I feel like Chicago just doesn't get talked about as much.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why.
I would agree, except like I said, as of late, I've seen more artists tweeting about how it's their favorite city to play in, and a lot of my close friends just raving about it now. So I don't know. Maybe there's a slight shift again since post-pandemic where it's not as talked about. So who knows?
Yeah. I mean, because it's always been great. The crowds are great. The artists are great. It's all there. I just feel like it doesn't get a fair shake in like the discourse of it.
Sure. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, just because I'm interested, because I came up in Chicago. That's like where I really became a professional, if I'm that at all, in terms of DJing, in terms of producing, all of that. And the scene, the local scene, was so important to me when I was coming up. And so I kind of wanted to ask about your experience coming up in the Chicago area and what memories you have of that. Like, was the local scene, did that play a big part in your come up when you look back on it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there were, I had a pretty good circle of music friends, all trying to like do similar stuff. We definitely like pushed each other a lot, and it was good to have that community of people, trying to do similar things with a like-minded mentality. And it definitely, I felt like I had some sort of mentors in that time when I was first starting off, because there was definitely some well-established artists in Chicago when I was kind of starting out. But yeah, it definitely helped. And, I played a lot of my first sort of opening slots at like Concord and a lot of club gigs at like the Mid. And those definitely helped.
Mid, man, R.I.P.
I know. So sad. I remember seeing that venue, hearing it was closed, and then like a few months later, driving by it, and it was already gone and replaced with an apartment complex. The turnaround was so quick. I was like, man,
nuts, dude. I played the grand opening weekend of the Mid. Man, I still remember when they opened it up. It was wild.
Yeah, very iconic venue. I mean, almost every great artist had played there at one point, but such a great place to have kind of like started out and whatnot. So,
who were you opening for at the Mid? Do you remember?
Yeah, there were definitely a lot. I did a Lollapalooza after show, and I actually like was a closing act for Porter Robinson. I played before Slushy, played before. There were so many.
Yeah, of course.
There were definitely a lot at Concord as well, like Audion, Cashmere, Cash. Yeah,
and this is all kind of while you're still just a local, just hanging out in the
just
scene.
A local, just like starting to make electronic music.
That's fun, man. I miss those kind of gigs in a way, because it's all those gigs at that level, when you're just that local level, just getting into it. Everything is so exciting. It's like it almost doesn't matter what's happening in the gig. Just the fact that you're doing it at all is so exciting at that point.
Oh, 100%. And I try to bring myself back to that time and in that headspace so many times when I'm very fortunate and grateful to be playing the kind of shows I'm playing now, and don't quite get as nervous, which is a good thing. But at the same time, like you said, I kind of miss that first time excitement and jitters. But yeah, it's good to try to reminisce on that. It's humbling for sure.
It's funny you said you did not the opening slot, but the closing slot, which is something I feel like doesn't get talked about as much, because that's, as a local, you're either going to get, that like 8 p.m.
very
doors,
opening or very ending up.
Or you're going to have to go on at 3 a.m. after the headliner already destroyed and just try to like wring out the last little bit of energy.
Exactly.
Do you have a preference if you had to pick one or the other?
I guess, probably looking back, I would do the closing slot as a choice.
Yeah.
For a local. Yeah. I feel like a little more loose and forgiving then, because, when you're first getting a nice night going, people are like kind of just getting warmed up. Whereas if you're closing, you're already playing to a crowd that's warmed up, and
you can surf that wave a little bit as long as you start really good, as long as you lock in really fast, you can definitely ride that wave a little bit.
Totally. Yeah. Whereas it's interesting because like when you're opening, there's definitely some sort of appropriate protocol, whereas you couldn't open your set the way you would if you were closing as opposed to opening,
Yeah, so. Absolutely, man. And that's another thing I think gets underappreciated about being a local, or about playing those super early slots where there's not a lot of people there yet. To me, man, that's just putting in hours in the gym. I think you can learn so much from playing those early slots and just trying to engage with whoever's there on whatever level they're on at that time. It's hard, man. Mm-hmm. It's harder than being a headliner in some ways.
Oh, I would agree for sure. Aside from the learning curve of how, like, what kind of music to play in the opening, you definitely learn so much about, let's say for instance, people who kind of have stage fright or are just really nervous in general about doing that. It definitely feels awkward playing for just a handful of people in the room when you're first opening, or let's say you play when doors open. It definitely helps you overcome that awkward feeling you'd get. Sometimes you just gotta be like, all right, I'm just going to have fun regardless of who is walking in, how many people are here. It's all good. So that definitely is quite a benefit, I think, for people opening up.
Yeah, man, put the ego aside. And I think you figure out, just as a performer, how to lock in with people, how to, really get on people's level. Because if there's only 10, 20 people in the room, you really got to lock in with them if you want anyone to stay,
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned too that, you had some bigger artists who were kind of mentors, and some other people in your local scene who were around. Who were the people kind of floating around at that time? Because I'm guessing at this point, the whole scene has kind of cycled. But I think back when I was doing that same thing, and there was like an amazing group of maybe, 30, 40 people that you would just, everyone was working, everyone was an artist or a photographer or a sound guy or whatever it was, but you would see the same people everywhere you went. And it was kind of this family thing after a while.
Totally. There were just a couple artists who were definitely some strong influences. And, like you said, this a cycle. Some of them aren't really doing as much music anymore, but at the time, they definitely helped me kind of like learn the ropes, because I was such a newbie with like everything, production and that whole world of DJing. So I don't know if you remember the guys, Milk and Cookies.
Yeah, I remember that.
Another. Yeah, they were super like welcoming and kind of down to be like, yeah, this is how we do things. And I had another artist friend named Prapa. And Milo. And these are all definitely some really talented music producers at the time.
It's interesting, man, who sticks around and who doesn't, because it's not always the most talented ones. You know what I mean? Like because I had the same thing. There's plenty of incredible talents that I know from back in the day who aren't doing it, or are doing it in like not in the public eye anymore, behind the scenes or something. And as long as we're talking about kind of this period of it, how did you get into dance music in the first place? Like, do you remember becoming aware of electronic music?
Yeah, it was like sixth or eighth grade, somewhere in between there. I had heard Tiesto's Elements of Life album. And yeah, I loved that. It was kind of trancey, but I had such an appreciation for really cool atmospheres and melodies and whatnot. And he had that going on for sure. And my brother kind of got me into some other interesting electronic music like Mimosa. I don't know if you're familiar with Mimosa, but that at the time was some really unique kind of like bass-ish music. And that was like eighth grade going into freshman year. That time it was like Skrillex was just like becoming big. And so bass music was starting to finally get put on the map pretty significantly. Had never been to a show, an electronic show, until I think I was 16. I went to a Roscoes show with one of my high school girlfriends. Okay. And honestly, I hated it. I was like, what the hell is this? It was so weird and bizarre.
Well, because Roscoe, I mean, at the time, especially if you hadn't heard that much of it and hadn't been to a show, like Roscoe's music is wild. It's out there,
Yeah.
For like someone,
for sure.
Yeah, for someone who's never heard it before. Yeah.
Yeah, this was over 10 years ago. So like having that first exposure to something like that was definitely just like, it's like trying sushi for the first time. You're like
right.
you're kind of gagging. You're kind of just like, this is a weird texture thing. I don't know.
Yeah. And be like, wait, this is raw. They didn't cook it. Yeah.
Yeah. But eventually the more I got exposed to it, the more I fell in love with the sort of bass side of things. But even before that happened, I saw Alesso play. I think when I was actually in DC, my brother went to college out there.
Okay.
And he took me out to some like club or venue, and I saw him, and I thought that was super cool. But it didn't really feel like a venue, and we were in a weird spot on the venue, so I didn't really get a great experience. But I saw Tiesto play at the UIC Pavilion in Chicago.
Yeah.
And that was like my first like real show. That was just one of the coolest experiences. And since then I was like hooked. This was freshman year of college. And then I went to an Alesso show at Congress. RIP.
Oh yeah. RIP Congress, man.
But, and that was kind of like this, ever since then, I was just going to shows, as many shows as I could. I fell in love with that culture so much. So
that's when it really connected.
I started doing like
when you saw it on the big stage, like the big production kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's a full experience. You feel it, you see all of it, and it's crazy. Yeah, I started doing like little mashups in my dorm room after I would go to these shows. I'd be like, I got to play around with this stuff because I have a musical background, and like instinctually, I was like, I hung up the hat for a bit on music. And yeah, once I kind of got the experience of these shows, I was like, I gotta do something here. It's so fun, and I enjoyed it as much. So I started off doing mashups, and then from there teaching myself how to learn the software production. So yeah,
that's great.
So I kind of went on a rant there, but
no. That's what we do here. You're all good, man. What's the musical background? Because I know you played piano as a young kid, right?
Yes. Yeah. I had got into piano lessons when I was like 4, super young.
That's really young. Yeah.
Yeah. My parents, or more so my mom she knew that it was like good for the brain and the development of the brain. So I think that was her intention, was getting me in there for that reason. But yeah, I had a super intense and strict piano instructor from the Philippines, and he would literally like yell at me and kick me out of his class. These are like private classes. He would kick me out if he felt I didn't practice enough.
Oh, wow.
And then it got to the point where I'd have to do these tape recording practice sessions to prove that I was practicing. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was intense.
That sounds stressful for a young kid, man.
It was stressful. It's like being force-fed vegetables. You're not going to like it if you're force-fed, So I grew to dislike it very much. But, of course, when you're young like that, you don't really just, I guess, have that appreciation for things like that. And I appreciated it so much kind of once I was stopped taking lessons. I look back and I'm so grateful for that. So
sure. Yeah. I mean, of course, I'm sure it was good for your brain, and that intense training, whatever you want to say about it. I mean, if you're going to train intensely when you're young is the time to do it, because that's, when you can absorb
when your mind's
all
a
of that.
sponge. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that. And then I remember kind of making a compromise with my mom because I was like, God, I hate these piano lessons. But I love drums. How do we feel about throwing me in some drum lessons? So they were down for that. And I got to do some drum lessons when I was like, starting when I was like 8 or 10, something like that.
I grew up playing trumpet, and it was pretty serious. It wasn't quite as intense as that sounds, but it was fairly serious. And I also got to a point in high school where I was like, yeah, can I try like guitar? Can I try drum? I tried a few different things, and that was sort of the first time I realized that how much that practice and that intense study helps. Because when I tried a new instrument, I was like, oh, wait, this is hard. Like I have to learn all of this from the ground up again. And then I kind of went back to trumpet, and I was like, you know what, maybe this wasn't so bad.
Yeah, exactly. So when did you start playing trumpet?
I started.
Was that in high school?
No, it was way younger. It was probably like elementary school, probably like, I don't know, 3rd or 4th grade, something like that. And I played pretty seriously all through high school, jazz band and orchestra and big band and all that kind of thing. And then in college, I kind of dropped off a little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of like when I was thinking too, to like drop off from music pretty much. I would play a lot all the time through grade school. I would try to do some like cover bands with my friends, and a little bit in high school. And then towards the end of high school, I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to do anything with this. So focus on trying to do the academic world going into college. So
what were you thinking about, your future at that point? Did you have an idea of what you were going to do?
Yeah, I was leaning towards being a doctor of some sort. I wasn't entirely sure what kind of doctor I was trying to be, but I was in bio pre-med for my first year at college, and discovered electronic music, found a studio on campus that the school had, a music studio that nobody was using. So I would skip class and go to that instead.
Nice. Well, and bio pre-med that's a hard way to go too. That's a hard course of study.
I mean, I realized that quickly, just how competitive that was in the first semester. We were in these big lecture halls, and a lot of the kids up front are interacting with the professor like nobody else is around. I'm like, geez, this is pretty cutthroat. We're back here. We can't even hear what he's saying or asking. And I don't know. It was definitely competitive. I was discouraged pretty quickly. So
yeah, that's interesting though, because I think what we do now, like the music industry, the entertainment industry, has a reputation of being extremely competitive as well. But it's interesting to think about that. Maybe it's just a different perspective, or maybe the way you engage with it, where this kind of competition feels good and it's like fun as opposed to academic competition. I don't know. It's a different thing.
Yeah. I definitely want to touch on that a bit, because I have some strong feelings about the competitiveness of the electronic music world. And if there's anything to take away from this conversation, I just want people, and mostly all of the artists, to know that this is not a competition whatsoever. There is a lane for everybody. Have you ever discovered a music artist? You like one band or one artist, and then discover another one being like, you know what? I don't like this band anymore. I only like this band. It's never been like that. Right. There might be some elitist culty artists, maybe, or who have that sort of culty following, that they might feel that way. Like, oh, this artist till I die, nobody else. Whatever. There's that's a few people, but there's a lane for everybody. As far as like, the competitiveness and like it feeling like a race, there's no race. There's so many people who it's just like things just start kicking off for them when it's meant to kick off. And I think the more inspired you are from other artists, as opposed to feeling intimidated or like they're your competitor, you're going to feel happier with yourself. You're going to feel more inspired. And I think you'll end up getting cooler art and results out of that, you know?
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, 100%. I think the reason it gets this competitive, like stereotype is kind of what you're talking about. I think it's because for a lot of people, things don't happen as quickly as they want them to, or they see somebody else getting something that they want or that they're trying to do. And all of that builds into this kind of illusion of like, it's very cutthroat and competitive. But you're absolutely right that really it comes down to the individual artists. And as long as you're doing the work and sort of putting, I guess I'll say being authentic in your work, like the more authentic you can be, the more true to it you can be, nobody else can do that. So it's that already that like kind of eliminates the competitive angle because you're already doing something no one else can do. And you can't do what anyone else is doing. It's kind of
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, again, like one person's success when they see something happening for another like artist, one person's success does not mean it's their failure at all. So yeah, just a reminder to a bunch of artists and people out there. It's
a good reminder.
That's the case.
It makes me want to ask though, how have you dealt with moments of frustration during your come up during your career? Because everybody has them. Like
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've definitely been in that. I've had the opposite mindset that I do now at one point.
Course.
You know, and
same here.
It definitely, you know, I think it takes going through that sometimes and just realizing, I don't know, definitely some introspection. You know, I don't know. I'm sure a lot of people try to do that and be diligent about upkeeping themselves and their mental states, but doing some introspection of if you're feeling like you're not getting the results that you want, you know, what's going wrong here? You know, if you're feeling down, what's getting you down? Are you down because you're thinking about these things and like feeling like there's competition? Well, maybe you should not feel like it's a competition and see what happens. And, you know, I definitely have, I struggle with self-affirmation for sure. And it is a nice little wind in the sail, having friends give you some positive feedback and whatnot. So I definitely have, you know, benefited from having some good friends nearby, being like, hey, you know, you're unique, you're a breath of fresh air because of this and that. And, you know, so that definitely gets wind in the sail to where I start convincing myself of those things. And yeah, talking with your friends and trying to have that introspection and hopefully meet other people who have that perspective too, that this isn't a competition and learning from them. So unfortunately, not everybody gets exposed to those conversations, but
it's true. Yeah. But yeah, I think you're right. I mean, this is something I talk about all the time on this podcast is finding your community, finding your place. Like even to take it back to what we were saying earlier about being locals in Chicago, there were plenty of times when I would get frustrated that, you know, I wasn't on the level I wanted to be or things weren't going my way. But then I could always look around to all the other people in my local scene that I would go out, you know, 3-4 times a week and I would see them every night. And it was this really reassuring feeling of like, well, we're all doing this together, you know, like regardless of what's going on with me this week, there's this movement that I'm a part of, this family that I'm a part of, and we're all kind of pushing for this thing in one way or another. And man, I mean, it was invaluable to me looking back to have that kind of support network. Not even that it was people that I would talk to who would sort of talk me through something hard, but just the fact that we were all there and all doing it and all supporting each other. I mean, yeah, man, I don't know how I could have done it otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely fundamental to have friends like that and just a community.
Do you feel like you have that now? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but do you feel like you've managed to find that now on your level? Because I think it's so much easier to have that local scene where you just see people because you're all in the same place. But then at a certain point, once you see some success, which you certainly have at this point, you get busier, you get maybe a little more isolated from, you know, just the daily going out, seeing people, that kind of thing. Do you feel like you have a good group at this point in your life?
I do. Luckily, I do. I've made some good friends in this music world. A lot of other artists I've grown to be really close with, and luckily they all share a similar mentality. It's probably because they've experienced similar things and have gone through similar processes where they get it, and so we get to share that mentality a bit, which is great, and that's reaffirming. But we do, we each kind of have our dips and our waves of not having the best mentality about all this and being harsh on ourselves, which can be healthy, but it's unhealthy to a certain degree. And but we've all been there for each other, seems like, so far, and it's great. But again, going back to like Chicago days, you have that community and that group to be supportive, but you all do kind of share a little bit of that frustration together,
Yeah.
So the only sort of contrast I'd say now is that some of the music friends I have, we've definitely become wiser since our early days, and it's less of a frustration and more of like, oh, I'm feeling this way. I know what I got to do to get out of it. I know what I should be thinking about to combat this way of thinking. So.
Yeah, which is good. And some of that is just the obvious, like wisdom is experience thing, where you kind of just have to live long enough to have some experiences, and then you can, put it together after the fact. But as long as we're talking about this too, because I think a lot of up and coming artists listen to this podcast, and that transition from being a local to being, a touring artist, I think that's sort of this shadowy, murky area that, it seems like everyone tries to do it, and then some people magically just make it happen. So for you, how did that transition happen? I mean, I'm sure it's a slow, gradual thing, but to go from the local opener playing at 8 p.m. or 3 a.m., to now, I mean, going on your own headlining tour in a few weeks here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had a manager pretty early on who I'm still with this day, and he was kind of getting me and plugging me into these local shows in Chicago, which helped. I was releasing music at the time too, so I was, accumulating somewhat of a small following in Chicago.
How'd you meet the manager?
He was actually managing a couple of other artist friends I was friends with, so he was the only sort of music manager I knew at the time.
Right.
And I was like, hey, I'm starting to get into this. When the time is right, would need some management if you're interested. And so that's kind of how that happened. But so much of it, I think, does have to do, with just the music you're putting out, and if people are resonating with it. For me, it wasn't so much like the shows I was playing that was helping me, but I think after a couple key releases, I don't want to give too much credit to agents, but like they do help a lot. And they hit up my manager one day and were like, hey, do you need representation? We're looking to sign you. So kind of when that call came in, things changed a bit. Their first call to action was putting me as the opener on an adventure club tour, and so that was my first, like, okay, I'm traveling and playing shows for real. The most traveling I ever did was more opening slots, but like in Madison, Wisconsin, that was like the farthest I had gone.
Right.
Liquid.
Yep.
That venue up there.
Yeah, I know Liquid. Yeah.
So it was like Concord, the Mid, Liquid were
nice.
The sort of home bases. But the agency definitely helps kind of get me traveling and kind of entered into that world for sure. And then I did another opening slot on the Liquid Stranger tour. And then kind of graduated from there. But I think so much of it initially was just getting out music that people resonated with, and my agents recognize people like this music, and they're resonating with it. So much of it, like the music will speak for itself at the end of the day.
Yeah, man, and I love. I mean, I preach this too: is that you were just putting your head down, putting out music, working hard. And you kept putting it out there, and eventually it was recognized, right? And people start approaching you, which, I think in an ideal world, that's how it should always happen. everyone's different. Everyone has a different path. But I think if you're able to do it that way, there's nothing better. How long was it from when you started making music, first started getting into production, to when you first put out some of those early songs that people really latched on to?
I have to, I'm going to pull up my Spotify really
crunch
quick.
The numbers on
check
that.
Check the date of my first release. Because I know when I was starting making music, but
but it was like, it did catch on somewhat fast, right? Once you started officially putting out tunes.
I would say so. Like relatively, I feel like I've had a pretty fortunate sort of route since starting to make music. So let's see, 2015 was my first release. Yeah, I think I started making music within my first year of making or trying to learn the software and making electronic music, I released that song.
That's fast, man. I mean, how hard were you working on production at that time? Because I have to assume it was all day, every day.
It was all day, every day. I was hooked, so hooked. So when I initially dropped out of college, I said I was going to this music studio that they had on campus. They had all the hardware there. They had the software. They had Logic 9 on this computer, on this Mac computer. And so I was kind of like dabbling with that. So, but that was a very short time while I was there. It was like maybe like one semester I was doing that and going on shows and then trying to teach myself that. But so I was maybe 20 or 21 at that time, and then dropped out real quick, and I had nothing else to do. I was at home, my parents hated me.
I was going to say that must have been a popular move.
It was rough. Really depressing for sure. But I was locked away in my room pretty much since then, every day, every night on Logic 10, teaching myself how to do all this stuff. So it was a quick turnaround, but the hours made sense.
Did you, when you were learning how to produce, was anyone like teaching you? Were you watching YouTube tutorials, or was it all self-taught?
So my first two releases were done through Logic 10, and of the music friends that I knew, I didn't really have any other music friends for the first several months of me working on music. So YouTube tutorials for sure. University of YouTube, Google University. That was how I learned. So yeah, because like I said, I was on Logic 10, and then after that I switched to Ableton.
Right.
I had a lot of friends on Ableton, and they definitely showed me how to use that.
That makes sense. I mean, it's just interesting, especially if you didn't have a lot of music friends to start with or a lot of producer friends. That must have been a really crazy feeling time in your life, man, to sort of throw away the life path you thought you were on. Your parents are mad at you. And then to try this new thing where it sounds like you didn't even know that many people who were trying to do the same thing. So it's sort of just this crazy dream that just you has, you know what I mean?
No, absolutely. And I was told that every day, I'm living in, my mom would be like, you're living in La La Land. You're wasting your time. Yeah. So it was definitely tough, but I don't know. I knew nothing better than music because I had taken so many lessons of it for so long and have loved music so much. That's instinctually, I was really wanting to do the college thing and do all that, but I didn't want to as bad as I guess I instinctually wanted to do music. It just stuck around, couldn't avoid it.
That's interesting, man. So if you started, if you were just sort of thrown into piano when you were very, very young, were you also passionate about music? Do you have memories of yourself being passionate about music? Not somebody else telling you go take lessons, but you yourself really finding music that meant something to you when you were a kid?
Yeah, particularly in 7th or 8th grade, between 6th and 8th grade, when I was starting to write my own music and kind of do this sort of punk rock alternative band with my friends from school. We did more so covers than anything else. We wrote a couple songs, that's when I was like really passionate about it, because I loved it so much. Just starting to write my own music and play as a band. Like that felt like a dream in itself when I was in eighth grade.
Yeah.
So, but man, I got really bullied for the first song I made, because I mean, the lyrics were stupid. They were cheesy. I'm 14 years old, and people at my school thought it was stupid. So they would walk past me whispering the lyrics as I walked by in a very non flattering way.
Oh, dude, that's so mean. That's
I know.
What kind of assholes went to your school?
Oh, I know. People who I don't know, like
no. But it is always great, because that's like out of a movie bullying. That's like such stereotypical bullying.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, I was like, really, come on, this is supposed to be fun.
What kind of songs were you covering?
Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Okay,
mostly that.
Nice.
Some Green Day, Rolling Stones. Who else? Yeah, mostly those for sure. We all, me and my friends, loved Red Hot Chili Peppers back in the day, and that was really fun.
Were you drumming on those?
I was drumming. Yeah. That's in that time period. I was drumming, and I ended up doing a metal band. I was a drummer in a metal band throughout high school.
Oh, nice, man. I was a singer in a metal band throughout high school.
Oh, no way. Like singing or screaming?
I mean, a little of both. I couldn't do either one. Yeah, a little of both. I couldn't do either one very well. It was like the classic. Just, we did a lot of covers too, and it was just the classic high school. Just like, I have a lot of emotions and I want to make some noise kind of band.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I love that stuff. Who were some of your favorite metal bands?
Oh man, I mean, still to this day, bands like I love like Sepultura, and I mean, Black Sabbath is sort of a cliche to mention, but they are, I think, still one of the best that ever did it. And I got into some weirder stuff too. Like I was super into like 9 Inch Nails for a long time, and kind of just recently got back into them. But then all the new metal stuff too. I was super into Korn and Limp Bizkit and all that kind of stuff. Like that was their heyday. That was my high school. So it was like exactly hitting me at the right time.
For sure. Yeah. Did you watch that Woodstock in '99 documentary?
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah. How crazy. I can't even go to a festival anymore without thinking about that. Just being like, wow, we're doing pretty good now. So
we are. Yeah, absolutely, man. And I mean, that's like, the late 90s, like that's when I was a teenager. That's when I was going to see a lot of these bands. So I remember wanting to go to Woodstock 99.
No way.
There was no way my parents were going to let me, but man, that was like, I would have lost my mind if I was there.
Good thing you didn't, for sure. Don't have to be drinking poop water and getting sores in your mouth.
Yeah, it wouldn't be so good, man. No, festivals and events have come a long way from then. Yeah. But then again, we got like Fire Festival now, so maybe it's on a case by case basis.
Yeah.
Well, you just came back. I saw an email from your manager. You guys were doing Wakan Fest last weekend.
Yeah, that's right.
How was that, man? Tell me about that, because I've seen a lot of people talk about how Wakan Fest is kind of a special event, but I've never actually made it out to any of those.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's really remote. It's on Mulberry Mountain in Arkansas or Kansas. So,
Arkansas.
They're able to push the volume as loud as they possibly can. And the fest goes to like 6 a.m., starts at like noon, goes till 6 a.m. And there's only one main stage. Right. And it gets all the bells and whistles in terms of production. And the cool thing about that is that, there's nowhere else for people to go during the day. They go to that stage. So a lot of the people playing earlier, some of the smaller artists, they're getting put on, which I love. I mean, aside from some people who probably want to sleep because they were out all night,
right,
and miss out. But it's cool. They get to play on that stage and have a lot of people there. But aside from that aspect, the people who go are really great. They seem to kind of know what they're doing in terms of being a festival attendee. A lot of people are really respectful. super laid back. I guess like the detail of the fest is cool too. It felt really safe. The other stages, the second stages that they had going after the main stage, were all great. They sounded so good. The aesthetics of everything was super cool. They had something this year, which they didn't have last year, called the Wakamedy, which is where an artist named Taboo.
Right. Yeah, I know him.
He got to take over. They trusted him to take over a stage for a whole hour and put up a lineup of comedians. So people got to wake up one day and go to the stage, spend their early afternoon watching comedy, and
that's great.
It was just so cool. So funny.
Kurt from Flostradamus and I, many, again, taking it back to like early Chicago days for me, we, back in the day, like before I was anyone, and really before Floss had started to pop off too, he and I made a joke mixtape that was all kind of like funny edits of popular dance songs at the time. And we were trying to figure out for years how to do kind of like a comedy electronic music like tour where we could like try and, at first we were thinking about like taking over comedy clubs and kind of having comedians be the openers and then we would play later. We could never get the concept to work. It never actually happened, but I thought it was awesome that they did that over at Wakan.
Yeah. Definitely keeps it fresh and different. So, but aside from all those aspects, one thing that was really, really nice and a different feeling of safe was that as an artist, I felt like that was a place to play stuff I would feel very vulnerable playing, like a lot of pretty and feelsy stuff, even though like Wakan is kind of known as this free form experimental bass label and bass community. Martin, Liquid Stranger, talks about how it's free form in the sense that it doesn't have to be bass stuff. This is a community and a place where you can play whatever the hell you want. And so I felt like it was an appropriate place to do some really chill and pretty moments in my set, especially towards the end. And, I get really nervous about it because when you play stuff like that, stuff that isn't danceable or stuff that's really chill, you're not going to see much crowd interaction or crowd movement. So from afar, I'm like, oh man, are they liking it? Are they digging it? So I'm like kind of keeping my head down. But the feedback after this weekend was incredible. People saying they were crying and having some really special emotional moments. And, I feel like I couldn't do that at a lot of festivals where the sort of expectation is something higher energy or just like party time or like high energy time, which is cool. I'm always down. I'm down for stuff like that too. But it's also really nice to be able to be in a setting like a festival setting and feel like it's okay and safe to do something like that. And Wakan is definitely that kind of place. Again, people there love bass music, but they're also very open to what seems just like any sort of music, really. So I mean, that felt special in that way.
Do experiences like that change the way you think about approaching your own shows? Like, especially now that, you're going on this headline tour on kind of a bigger level than you have in the past. And it's a little less about sort of how do I make what I do fit in with everything else. And now it's a little more, how do I, really just express myself? Like, are you thinking about sets differently, performances differently these days?
Yeah, I know, absolutely. Like to what you just said, that's exactly right. I'm definitely going to be, having this Wakan Festival was a good last festival going into the tour because it was similar, like a similar setting, or it seems like I would do something similar for the headline tour. But I do think, I will definitely be trying to keep this headline tour set as something very, very special and something, I don't know, more expressive of myself and the vibe I want to create for this tour. So I'm aware that it is a headline tour and it's like quite the adjustment because I've always been trying to fit on the lineup and being a support artist. So I'm trying to be aware, but I have done headline shows and I am aware that people are coming to see me for the most part. So I don't have to fear so much about fitting in. I'm just going to do me, and I hope they'll like it. I think they will, but yeah, just trying to do me, you know.
I've seen you say, like, I was scrolling through your social media a little earlier today when just getting ready to talk. And, you know, it seems like over time, you've kind of, from time to time, just put out statements like that of, you know, like, I have plans to evolve my music. It's not always going to be the same. I'm working on some different stuff, that kind of thing. I mean, it seems like you've been preparing people who like what you do for a while to really sort of let it all hang out.
Yeah, well, I do that only because there's been some bad examples of people getting shit on by their fan base for some dumb reason, like Getter. You know,
poor Getter.
Put out such a great album, the Visceral album. You know, and you get people being like, this isn't heavy enough. This isn't, you know, this live show isn't crazy enough or like high energy enough. That message gets out and makes me a little scared sometimes. So, but from all the reactions I've seen about making those posts, kind of warning or disclaiming to people, I've gotten some, you know, nice feedback being like, put out whatever the hell you want. We're going to love it, you know? And like, that's reassuring. So I'm like, okay, maybe it's not necessary. I have to disclaim or warn anybody. But for my sake, I felt like I needed to maybe warn some people because I do kind of dabble all over the place genre-wise, especially in a lot of these unreleased songs I have. You know, I'll make heavy stuff, I'll make funky stuff. So I even got a couple house tunes. So
nice.
I think obviously the more I get it out, the more people will start to understand that, okay, he'll make whatever. It's gonna be what it is. It's not gonna be exclusively this or exclusively that, you know? So I like to get the message out that I would like to be versatile and make whatever the hell I want, I guess.
Yeah, man. So. Well, I mean, maybe that's a good way to talk about the Earth Magic EP, because the single for that, I think by the time people hear this will already be out, or the first single from it. Mm-hmm. What should people be expecting? Is there anything just in general you want to say about the new music that is to come?
In terms of the Earth Magic EP, like I've said, it's in some social posts, it's a lot more feelsy. It's a lot more chill. It's the side that I really wanted to get out, and like very cinematic. There's some songs where there's no drums. There's like no beat. It's just like beautiful pads and like orchestral sounding stuff. And I love that stuff. You know, the Interstellar soundtrack is one of the most beautiful pieces of music. I love Hans Zimmer. I love a lot of movie scores. So this is kind of me infusing some sort of like lo-fi, but also big electronic influences in with cinematic stuff. So that's kind of this Earth Magic project. And then as far as stuff coming out afterward, it's pretty all over the place. I have a handful of collaborations with LS Dream, a handful of collaborations with some other artists as well. I have a couple house tunes. I was thinking about maybe just doing a house EP because I love house music. So
yeah, that'd be great.
That was actually like the first stuff I used to make. I just never released it. Got some more funky stuff too. So kind of after this little intermission of just like pretty feelsy stuff, people can expect the more versatile, heavy bangers, funky stuff, house stuff. But then I do want to do an album with the intention of doing an album. Like this EP, it could be an album with the amount of songs that are on it, but it didn't start as that. You know, I didn't go in being like, all right, I'm starting my album now. This was like kind of like I made this song and I made this song and they kind of have a similar vibe. So I'll put them together to try to like glue a story out of it. But I do want to make an album where like, okay, August, whatever, I'm starting this album and writing it to the end. You know, I'm not going to try to work on anything else, but just album mode, start to finish. So, and I would love to do that after I get some of these collaborations done. So,
yeah, I knew you had done some work with LS Dream, who I love Sammy so much, man. And I wanted to talk to you about working with him because he and I have put out a couple songs over time and we have a bunch of tunes that never came out. And I toured with him, as I know you did too. And he's such an interesting dude, man. Like what are some of your impressions of working with him, touring with him? What comes to mind when you think about LS Dream?
Wisdom. For if I had to just like think of a word, just like one word comes to mind, just wisdom. He's very wise and incredibly talented. It's been fun working with him though, because we've done a handful of in-person sessions, and we'll just be hanging in the same room. He'll be on his laptop, I'll be on mine. We'll be working on stuff for a few hours and swap projects and
Nice.
Just go back and forth, and it's fun. We have great chemistry. It's almost like a third entity is manifested out of both of us, which is really cool. And one thing about collaborations in general, like working with him, definitely made me realize how much working with someone can bring out better things in yourself.
Yeah.
It's wild. Like it unlocks more potential within yourself. You just start. I don't know. It's really interesting. I can't really describe it, but we also have a handful of tunes that aren't going to come out. We've gone through several good ideas, then a few others were like, not so much. So
I think he has probably more unreleased collabs with people than anyone I've ever met, because he's so he's so focused, and I don't know, there's something about the way he sees his project that because back in the day, even when he was still working as Brills and he and I were in the studio a lot, there's several different tunes that I was like, dude, we need to release this immediately. This is going to be a huge song. And he just, every single time he'd have some reason why we shouldn't do it, or it's not the right time. And I talk to so many people who have those same stories. And I say that almost in a like admirable way that he does that, because I think he has such a clear vision for what he wants to do with his music and his project. And it's that kind of focus. I've always almost been envious of that he can just have it be so clear cut of what he's trying to do.
Totally. I mean, aside from that, specifically, his work ethic is also just through the roof. Anytime I talk to him or see him, he's working like crazy. And that's the proof is in the pudding. So he's working his butt off, and it shows. So
something you said a second ago too about how when you two are working together, it's almost like you get better as a producer. I think I wanted to connect that back to what we were talking about with competition earlier, because I think that's the healthy version of what we talk about when we talk about competition, where it's you're working with somebody else and it's intense, and you're both kind of trying to like push something forward and one up it a little bit, which is, that's a form of competition, but in that form, that's how you both get better. And it's almost more exciting. It's more fun to do it that way, when it's all kind of in service of, we're just trying to make the best thing possible,
Very true. Absolutely. I think you're spot on with that.
And he's an inspiring guy too, man. Fascinating.
Absolutely.
Dude. I mean, there's something about, I was thinking about him. I was thinking about you. I was thinking about Wakan in general. And there's something about the way you all conduct yourselves that I think sort of ties together for me. It's almost like what you were saying earlier about your come up, when you were just working hard, putting out music, and people started to notice. There's something about all of you guys and a bunch of other people too, but I think about Liquid Stranger, I think about you, LS Dream, a lot of the Wakan stuff, where it's kind of just working quietly and not really being too out there on social media, not really being too in your face with anything you're doing. And I don't know, do you resonate with that? Does that sound right to you about the way you operate, the way they operate?
Yeah. I would agree. I guess from what I've seen, I feel like even Sammy is a little more active on social. He's pretty active on social media. It seems like
he'll go on a rant.
Definitely resonate. I definitely resonate with not being as active on there. I'm just not the biggest fan of social media personally, for many reasons. But I feel like if I'm going to post something, if I do post something, it'll be something of significance, and I'll just keep it at that, yeah, social media is just like quite the topic.
Oh, I mean, it's the fucking worst, man. But
It really is.
I mean, so we were talking earlier about how there's this idea of the entertainment industry being super cutthroat, super competitive. I think another sort of just idea that is fed to us at this point is that you have to be a social media guru in order to be successful in this career at this point. So, how do you have a healthy relationship with it, not engage more than you really want to, and still manage to, have this career?
Well, to your point, I don't think you have to be a social media guru and like be in your face and like new content every 3 days or every week. Like I don't feel like it has to necessarily be that way. Unless you're doing things like a podcast or a show where you have something that's like on a schedule and that makes sense. But if you're just doing I don't think it's necessary to be doing content just to do content all the time.
I mean, I guess my question is, do you think if you were more active, would that help you? Like, do you think anything is lost by being kind of chill on social media?
I don't know. Maybe, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna stay as authentically me as possible, and I don't want to be doing social media all the time. If I do it, I will give it dedicated time to be really in it. I'll make a post, I'll interact, and I'll check out and comment on my friends' posts. But then I'll try to leave it at that and not do it too much. Yeah, I don't know. It's just not me.
Well, and I think
I wouldn't enjoy doing that.
I think it's just a myth that, especially again for any upcoming artists listening, I think people are sort of fed this thing that you have to be on social media 24/7 to make it. And
I agree.
It's nice to hear a story that is the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get me wrong. I think you have to exist.
Right.
That's the baseline.
Of course,
you got to exist. But yes, you do not have to be a social media guru and putting out all this stuff all the time. Because I don't know. If you think about it, there's something cool and kind of valuable about mystery. Being somewhat of a mystery. And when you do post, people are like, oh, yo, Porter Robinson just posted. Like, it's been a bit. I got to go check this out, or some other examples like that. Some other artists who don't post a lot, maybe like Death Pact or something. I know there's a lot of artists who aren't as frequent, but when they do post, it's
an event. Yeah, it's an event. That's absolutely right. And
exactly.
I think it's easy to get distracted with the game of social media when you're just starting off too, and almost mistake that for being, what you need to focus on, when what you need to focus on is making great music, especially at the start.
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah, man.
100%. I mean, a good example of that right there is Rufus Du Sol. They have obviously incredible music. They like rarely tweet. They're rarely on there, if at all. And if they do, they don't get much engagement, but they're selling out stadiums, and like, or amphitheaters at least. And like because their music is incredible. It's not because they're on Twitter all the time doing controversial tweets. That's not why. So,
man, 100%. And it's funny because you can see the opposite too. You can see people who do crazy numbers on social media, and then no one shows up to their concert.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one of those weird things. I like that you said you do have to exist, which is like, that's how we prove we exist at this point, is by having a social media account.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, I'm not sure. If I exist at all.
Yeah.
I did want to talk for a second about actual songwriting for you and kind of the musical evolution of your music.
Sure.
Terrible way to ask it, but musical evolution of your music. So stupid. But, listening to a lot of your early stuff, there is all the lush cinematic tendencies that you've mentioned. It's all there from the start. But then listening to a lot of your newer work, you can tell there's a lot more, in my words, a lot more kind of precision to it. There's kind of quieter moments. There's more, I don't want to say chilled out, but kind of, it'll go from these kind of maximal soundscapes to sort of more minimal moments in the same song. And I've seen you talk a lot about how a lot of your music comes from sort of pure emotions, pure feelings. And I kind of just wanted to ask you, whatever this means to you, whatever it makes you think of, what is the process of turning a feeling into a song, where we all know what it's like to feel angry or to feel sad or in love or whatever it is. But when you have that feeling and you sit down in front of a computer and open Ableton, like what is that process? What is your process of taking a feeling and turning it into something we hear?
That's a tough.
I mean, it's a big question.
A tough answer. Yeah. I mean, I will do my best to elaborate as best I can.
I mean, what does it look like if you just sit down in the studio?
Yeah. So I guess, if I'm trying to portray some sort of sad or uplifting emotion, I'll start with maybe just like a single note drone, and start playing some chords over that, which sometimes doesn't always work because certain chords won't work with that root note of a drone. But I'll just try to get something like built around that, some nice chords. I work so much with these really drowned out leads that are just playing a melody, and they're part of the atmosphere. They won't like sometimes come through. I'm referencing a couple unreleased ones, but even some released ones where they won't really come through so pungent as a lead, but they're so reverbed out or something or washed out that they're a part. They feel like they're a part of the chord progression or the atmosphere, and it just exacerbates a certain frequencies or a certain note within that chord.
Right.
And that I think just makes like a chord progression sound a little more unique, and that's kind of how I start in terms of building like an emotional atmosphere.
Which is kind of like just advanced layering, right? Is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Is kind of trying to layer, stack everything you're doing, but trying to make each individual part of that unique, and not just kind of a stock sound.
Yeah, exactly. And then as far as like how melodies go, I mean, that's just a process of me playing different melodies and seeing what strikes the chord within me that makes me feel like, oh, that makes me feel a certain way. And, not to be like too much of a emotional sap here, but like I've had, some moments where I'm writing, like a melody, like these melodies I'm talking about in this atmosphere of chords, and I'll get the melody just right in the sense where like it literally will be like just a punch to the gut, where I'm like, oh man, that melody and the way that sounded just now is literally making me cry, because it's so like accurate in the expression of accurate in the emotion that I'm trying to express. And that's a rare thing and an awesome thing to be able to do that, as an artist and as a human, to be able to express yourself in that way. But yeah, it's just me playing around with melodies until I really feel it strike that chord within me. So, but then then I have times where I was really inspired by a Zed's Dead set one time. I wasn't necessarily in the sober state of mind, but
right.
The way I was feeling and seeing that set, it wasn't necessarily like a song or anything that like inspired me. It was just like the sort of imagery and atmosphere that I saw that just like stuck in my brain for some reason. And I just remember the feeling I had so much in that moment. And with that visual, I could like close my eyes and see it. And I would, try to, I guess, the song I made influenced by that, I would start with sort of sample selections where I was like, okay, the way these samples are sounding is kind of just got that timbre of this imagery and atmosphere that I'm seeing. And then it would kind of build off just the way that these kicks and snares and claps and percussions are hitting. And then, from there, try to start making cool bass sounds that I think would mesh well with those. But
right.
Yeah, little small details like that. Again, it's hard to explain, but I get influenced a lot by not just emotions, but like imagery and feelings I have with accompanied by imagery in certain moments. Like if I go on a hike, I'll be feeling really happy and relaxed, but then I'll be looking around and I'll see just all this greenery of trees. And like in that moment, that to me is like something I can like screenshot in my head and save for later and be like, okay, this moment right here is like inspiring. And
Yeah, and like what would the soundtrack to that moment be, right?
Yes. Yeah, no, exactly.
You touched on a couple good tricks for anybody listening, but yeah, I think the visual part of it, sort of, if you focus, like pick a visual, stick to that, and make sure that everything you're writing sort of fits the visual. I think that's a really good way to do it. I think also being present enough to sort of, when you're just starting and kind of noodling around, being able to be present enough to realize when you've really hit on that right feeling instead of just sort of cycling to the next preset or moving on to the next chord, having the presence to just sit there. Because music for me, like I can see colors sometimes when I'm listening to music, that sort of thing.
Synesthesia kind of.
Yeah,
kind
a little.
Thing, right?
Do you get any of that?
No, like not really. Yeah, I've heard of that, and like I've kind of been jealous of that ability, but colors do play such a big part in just in the sort of the pre-process, not so much like in hearing music, but like beforehand. I love certain coloring of skies and atmospheres and the colors of something that can be inspiring. But yeah, it's not so much when I listen to stuff. So
what do you mean about the colors? Like you'll see the color of the sky and that is sort of the inspiration you take later on?
Yeah, absolutely. Like when me and Sammy were working on stuff, there was one morning he was asleep and I stayed up all night. It was like 7 a.m.
Yeah.
And we were on the coast, California coast. We were in, I was just watching the sunrise and the color of the sky and like the color reflecting off the ocean and accompanied by a little bit of the green from the plants that were in my peripherals, like that combination of colors. I was like, this is the vibe of what I'm going to make right now, just like that color right there. I don't know. For me, I can that's how the color part works. It's more so beforehand and then the creating process of consciously thinking about a hue or color, but not so much seeing it while it happens.
Right. Yeah, man. Well, I kind of like that because those beautiful moments that, everyone can relate to that. We've all seen an incredible sunrise or, seen the moon at the right time, all that, where it's this moment that you can't hold on to as much as you want to, right? But in that moment, everything feels kind of perfect and it feels kind of magical. But what I like is that you're sort of trying to bottle that moment a little bit, which
I didn't think of it that way, but yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because every time I do think about it, I see that sunrise now for sure.
Man, you get to save a little piece of it for yourself, which is really cool because that's not something a lot of people get to do. And it's nice to just appreciate the simple shit too, man. It's like I like just talking about a pretty sunset or a pretty sunrise on the show because I spend so much time talking about like the intricacies of the music industry and, all this like stressful shit that people go through. But at the end of the day, like that's really what we're all here for, right? Is those moments of whether it's a sunrise or whether it's hearing the right song at the right time. It's what you said earlier. It's sort of that wordless experience that you really only know if you feel it.
It's quite magical, isn't it? It's like, it feels like magic in a sense. It's like, it literally feels like you're watching like a rabbit come out of a hat. It's like, how is that possible? And it kind of makes you want to touch on, I guess, sort of the premise of earth magic. Yeah. Because I've had these experiences before, as we all have. And, in these moments, especially accompanied by music, I'll be listening to inspiring stuff and having a cool moment with nature or just seeing Earth be crazy.
Earth be crazy.
Earth do be crazy.
Earth do be crazy.
If I spoke, I don't know if you speak Chinese, but if I spoke Chinese to you, you probably wouldn't understand me, right? That's a learned language.
Right.
However, if a human just were plopped down on Earth, they're 20 years old and doesn't know a single language, but started hearing a song and a melody for the first time ever, it will undeniably make them feel something in their brain. It causes a chemical reaction in their brain to feel a certain way. To think that we are only able to hear sound the way we do because of our medium, this atmosphere of nitrogen, oxygen, methane, all these things. It's the right cocktail of molecules for sound to travel the way it does. Sound doesn't exist in space. There's no medium. Sound sounds way different in water. Sound travels way faster through water than it does air. It travels faster through metal than it does water. And just to think that as of right now, we only know of one planet like this, Earth. I think there's so many other planets out there that can have similar features and whatnot, but it's pretty unique and darn magical that we have this right cocktail of things that, even just us as humans, a product of the universe, we are able to have a brain that can perceive these sounds and have these feelings and emotions from these sound waves that are traveling through this atmosphere. And that to me is just like, wow, that's if that's not magic, I don't know what is,
Yeah, man. So, yeah, you're spot on. And I think it's also fascinating that, like you said, you don't have to share the language, any of that. There's something about it where it circumvents our thinking brain and goes straight to kind of the instinctual part of our brain.
It's almost like a language of the universe. Like the fact that you don't have to be taught it, but your brain will perceive it and you'll feel these things, and they say plants or something like that. If you play music or something like that for plants, they might grow better or something like that. I don't know if that's true, but it feels like, according to the laws of physics, sound waves, they're actual waves. If you had a filter on your glasses to be able to see them, you could see them. And, they're a real thing. Those are just existent by the laws of the universe and the laws of physics. So it's crazy to think that just exists how it does, and that we can perceive that in such a crazy, cool, beautiful way.
I mean, it's crazy, man. I think producers forget that all the time. I mean, I certainly do, but it's like, you think about it, you sit down, you flip open Serum or whatever synth you use, put on a square wave or a sine wave. I mean, those are physical waves that are bouncing around your room. It's not just something in your computer that you're looking at.
Right.
It's literally a physical thing that flies out of a speaker. It's crazy.
Yeah. So at Wakan this last weekend, I saw in this one moment they had all this haze in front of the stage, and when they do the effects with the lasers where they go so fast side to side that it looks like it creates like a sheet.
Yeah.
And you could see all the smoke swirling slowly through these lasers. So yeah, it usually happens in like really soft moments of people's sets. They just have these lasers creating this sort of ceiling. And so you see the waves. So the subwoofers on the stage were so loud in a really good, clean way. Right. But in those moments, it's almost like if you point a laser, you're not going to see the laser until the smoke's there. You'll see the point at which the laser is coming from, and you'll see the end of it on the object it's landing on. But you're not going to see the line of it until the smoke is there. So something that happened that was kind of cool was it had the lasers and the smoke, and then a certain frequency or a certain subnote, when it hit, I would see these like the smoke doing these crazy fast vibrations, and then when it changed to a different note in the sub frequency, the wave like totally changed. It was like way faster or like less movement, and then it changed to another frequency, and then there was like no movement. And then when it went back to that first note, you saw the crazy shakes again. I was like, wow, you can literally see the sound waves moving.
Yeah.
Which is something you rarely see. It's like you need that medium to see it.
Right.
So
yeah, man. And I mean,
that's pretty cool.
It is cool. And it's kind of fun that we spend all this time doing something so technical, like making dance music. It's a very technical pursuit, a lot of technology, a lot of learning software, all of that kind of thing. And even like sound design, like scientific knowledge going into it to sort of just it's just doing what the Earth is already doing in a fancier way,
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's all
we're not that original. Right? The universe has got us covered.
That's right. Yeah. We're not really doing anything new here. I kind of want to try ending with just a couple, just kind of quick, like almost lightning round kind of questions. I did this.
Sure.
I did this with Must Die the other week, and it was kind of fun. So these are just kind of random questions, and whatever it means to you, you can give funny answer, serious answer. Doesn't have to be a long answer. And yeah, we'll just kind of go through them to wrap it up. First question: what gives you energy?
I just had like several answers run through my head. Let's see. Caffeine, nootropics,
Yeah.
working out.
All good. All good.
Yeah, all those good. Yeah. Those
Okay.
give me energy for sure.
Perfect. What is the hardest you've worked?
Aside from music, probably working for my dad when I was working for his catering company. I would work from like 9 till 4 a.m. sometimes, and it would be like physical taxing labor, moving equipment around and cooking food. So that was a time in my life where I was working like crazy, like physically. So,
wow. How old were you then?
I did that from early grade school through high school. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Nice.
So a long time.
He was getting some free labor there. Yeah.
Oh yeah. They put me on their payroll eventually.
Yeah.
I was working like legit employee. So yeah.
Okay. So on that note, what makes work fun?
The simple aspect of enjoying what you do. That's it. Music is fun for me because I love music. I've had times where it feels like it's a job and it's not fun. And I have to sort of like be introspective and be like, hey, this has got to stay fun. You love doing this. Don't make it feel like it's a job you have to do. Anytime you feel like you have to do something, it's not fun. Yeah. Anytime you want to do something, that's when it's fun. So
yeah, you're right. What holds you back?
Not trusting myself, self-doubt. Yeah, pretty much those two things. I hold myself back with those ways of thinking.
Which that's very relatable. Would you say the opposite is also true, that when you trust in yourself, things get easier?
Yeah, absolutely. Self-affirmation is something I've been trying to work on. And, anytime I'm successful or at doing that, I definitely feel less pressure on myself, less strain, and yeah, the opposite is true for sure.
2-part question. What makes you tired and what keeps you going?
Traveling with minimal sleep, having that sort of juxtaposition of being adrenaline out after a show and then trying to sleep in a hotel shortly thereafter and having an early flight. That adds up and makes me exhausted. But I guess it goes perfectly into the next part of what keeps me going is that like, I might be exhausted, but I love what I do, so I'll be exhausted, but I'm like so fired up. And I remember being even less tired, not traveling, going to grade school or high school. And, I'd be having decent sleep, but I'd be so tired every day at school, being like, I just want to sleep in class. I hate this, so it's crazy how I could be more tired now and way more exhausted, but have way more energy just because I just love what I'm doing. I love every bit of it.
Amen, man. Yeah. That's finding your path or your purpose or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. You don't even have to believe in that spiritual side of it, but yeah, it's incredible when you find something you love to do, how much capacity you have to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Which, I'm sure you are as well, but just so grateful that we are able to do that because not everybody does or can, or not that nobody can, but a lot of people are, I guess, or just do.
We're in a privileged position to be able to do this, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, without a question. How do you unplug?
I go for hikes in the mountains, which is the greatest thing about moving out here in Denver. I love hiking so much. It's great. That, or I play Rocket League, which is not really unplugging and kind of plugging into something else.
That's sort of, just changing the plug from one socket to another. Yes. But I think it works. I think we'll allow it. What do you need? I
need to trust myself and love myself better than I do. I'd say other things I already have. I have so many great friends, a lot of good things like that in my life already. And, I feel like the one missing thing is just the love from myself.
It's good to know that, man. It's good to be aware of that, because I think even just that knowledge can be hard to come by.
Very true.
All right, and last one here, and I'm going to modify it a little. The question is, what do you want to leave behind? And I will expand that to also ask, do you care what you leave behind?
Yeah, that's funny. Do I care? Yeah, because like in a sense, my existential self is like, the Earth's gonna burn up in a few billion years anyways. Nothing's gonna be here. Doesn't matter. No.
I think that way too.
But in the short term, the only thing I feel like I would like to leave behind is just good memories. Being able to facilitate some good memories for my friends, family, myself, and I mean I'll be dead, but just being able to, I guess, leave behind memories of cool times, cool experiences. That's really it. And I guess I'll leave my music on Spotify if we could get that.
I mean, it's hard to even get it taken off there, man. You might as well just save yourself the headache.
Yeah.
This has been great, man. Is there anything else we haven't talked about? Anything else that's on your mind you want to get out there before we wrap it up? I mean, we talked about Earth Magic EP, the tour coming up. Yeah, so I guess to Denver specifically, I had the date blurred out on my flyer about the Denver show, but I just announced today that I do have a tour stop here in Denver at the Ogden Theater on January 27th. So I know tickets got a little messed up for some people because tickets went on sale and they were on sale for like $0. So they had to like that's a good deal. Like take those back or something like that. But there's a new ticket link. It should be working now. So nice. That show's on sale now. So and there's more dates that are going to be announced for the rest of the tour in 2023. We're just sussing out all the details. Be on the lookout for the second wave of tour dates. Hell yeah, man. Well, have fun out there, man. That's always an exciting moment. I'm sure that's going to be a wild time. Thanks so much, man. I'm excited, very nervous, but very excited. So, well, at least you still got a little of those starter nerves left in you. I think that's a good thing. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely had them for Red Rocks. That was like my first time playing there, and like that, it's just like such an iconic place. That felt like it was my first show all over again. I hadn't felt that way in so long. That the relief afterward was, I was like, oh my God, thank God it's over. I haven't felt that much anxiety in a long or excitement in a long time. So, are you the kind of person, do you feel it till you get on stage, or are you still feeling it while you're on stage? Because I think it could go either way. Yeah, it depends. I think for Red Rocks, after the first couple songs, I was like, all right, we're having a good time. But I think I didn't want to fuck up the whole time. That it did linger until it was over. Like I got to make it through every song. So this could still go bad. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's been fun talking to you, dude. I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate you having me. It's been great. Take care, man. Peace. Bye.